I noticed one thing. I just noticed that the sink is not there. So that sink was very important. There used to be a sink right there. Prabhupada used to sit right here on the platform because when Prabhupada would cut the apple after the kirtan, then he would not core it or would not skin it, just slice it. And then it would be passed around. And he would also take one. And he would just put it in and chew. And then somehow he was able to separate the core and the skin and so on. And then he would lean back and just spit the whole thing right into the sink. And everyone said, wow. No one did that. So that sink is not there. They should put a sign. This is the sink which Prabhupada used, as like a spittoon. I was going to work. I would go every day to work to New York City, a Board of Education, and one day I saw there was a newspaper just lying there in the subway. I wasn't reading I'd stopped reading the newspapers. There was a New York Times, and there was a picture of Dr. Radhakrishnan. And I just snatched it up. I started reading, and it was Dr. Radhakrishnan retires. He was the president of India. And I ran back to the temple with it to show to Prabhupada, because Prabhupada had been telling us all about Dr. Radhakrishnan. He had so much contact with him, and he had asked him to join in this movement. And Dr. Radhakrishnan was the Pakka Mayavadi, the deluded scholar, who said not to Krishna, the unborn within Krishna, and Prabhupada said so many things. And but Prabhupada had told us that he had invited Dr. Radhakrishnan to preach Krishna consciousness. And Dr. Radhakrishnan told Prabhupada, when I retire, then I will do it. And here I am riding on the subway to New York in my job, and there's the newspaper right staring me in the face, Dr. Radhakrishnan retires. So I took the article, and Prabhupada wrote him a letter inviting him to take up Krishna consciousness. And but whatever happened, nothing came of that. But then later, when Prabhupada went to India on his tour of South India, he went to see Dr. Radhakrishnan. And you know the story, how he was incapacitated and so on. He had gotten a stroke, and he couldn't even speak. He was paralyzed. And Prabhupada said, because he cannot speak because he is Mayavad. This is what Krishna has. He spoke so much nonsense, and now he cannot speak. My roommate from college, he came. I was living on 6th Street, and he came to tell me that we used to go to Ram Krishna, all these yoga places together, and he said, I just went to a very Swami, but very unusual. They were singing and dancing. We were into meditation, singing and dancing. And he said, and he has a big tape recorder. It was a tape recorder, because we refused to wear a wristwatch because we didn't want to know what time it was. So it was mundane time. But he said Allen Ginsberg was there. So he was our hero. So I said, I have to go. So then I came here, I walked over, and I came here and sat right back there at the door, and I remember Prabhupada coming in, the door opened, and Prabhupada came in, and as he came in, he was to get up on the platform, but instead he just stopped, and he turned, and he looked right at me. And I'll never forget that. It's like burnt into my memory that Dayananda is saying hello. Okay. So, anyway, Prabhupada once asked me, he said, how did you join? So, I told Prabhupada the story. This is a very important question. How did you join? I mean, even Prabhupada was interested to know how we joined. He asked me once, this is many years later, he said, how did you join?
Maybe it was just you.
No. So I told him, my friend, yeah, I guess so. He said, I told him that my friend told me about you, and I came, but he didn't join. And Prabhupada said, oh, same with me. And then he told the story how his friend, I think Narendranath Mulak, brought him to Bhakti Siddhanta, but then he did not join. Prabhupada joined. So then Prabhupada told that story very nice.
Got his stroke. It was Memorial Day weekend, and Memorial Day weekend in New York, everyone leaves New York City. It's like this huge exodus. And I could see Prabhupada couldn't function, it was serious. So I called my family doctor, but he was out of town. You just get the answering service. And I asked other devotees, anyone know any doctor? And nobody knew. And I was calling. I just took the phone book. I started making random calls. Whomever I called, everyone was out of town for the weekend. Everybody goes. At least in those days. I don't know now. And I'm just calling, and it's hard enough to get anyone to come to a residence anyway. And I actually could not get any doctor. And, it was either bringing Prabhupada to a hospital. I didn't want to do that. And ultimately, I just got some kind of doctor's referral service, municipal thing. And eventually I was able to get through them some doctor. And finally a doctor came. And he was this little old, I guess maybe Jewish guy. And he comes in. Of course we didn't ask him to take his shoes off, but there we're all standing in our we used to wear these jeans and t-shirts and barefoot, and and he walks in, there's no furniture, just a carpet, and there's this old Indian man. He couldn't figure what's going on here. And there's Prabhupada very sick, and everyone's walking around, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He just couldn't understand. So it took him a time just to understand what's going on here, then what to speak of examining Prabhupada. And he was a very kind of boisterous type of person, and he examines Prabhupada, and then, with the stethoscope, this, that. And then afterwards he goes outside, and so we asked him, so what's wrong? He said, well, I think the old man, he prays too much. So, well, oh yeah, okay. So, he's just praying there. He's just sitting there praying all day, and he's got to get out. He's got to do some exercise. And Prabhupada could hear him from, the other room. Yep, he's got to do something. He's got to exercise. Go for a walk. Got to do something. Go out in the morning. Take a walk. Go to the park. So, anyway, and then he just left. And this guy, that's all he could do, say. So eventually we did have to I did put Prabhupada in the hospital, and then that's a whole thing. And then Prabhupada came out of the hospital, then we took him to a house in New Jersey we had rented by the seashore. Anyway, then Prabhupada did recover sufficiently, and then Prabhupada announced that now I will take a morning walk. He said that doctor, he said something very good, very valuable. We all laughed because we thought the guy was nut. And he said, Prabhupada said, no, he has given very good instruction. I will take that up. And Prabhupada then proceeded to take a morning walk, and Prabhupada always took that morning walk. I mean, no matter what his condition, what his health was, or whatever. I mean, I know stories of Prabhupada when Prabhupada was in Switzerland and it was snowing out. He was in a hotel, Shamsundar took him to St. Moritz, that's the whole story. But Prabhupada couldn't go outside for his morning walk, so he took his morning walk in the corridors of the hotel, walking, just as if he was outside. He was just walking and walking. I mean, I know when there was an automobile accident we had in Mauritius, and we all had been injured, even Prabhupada. The next morning, Prabhupada rang his bell. We were all aching and paining, and Prabhupada, he was injured even more, and on his leg and so on. He rang his bell. We're going morning walk, and we were like hobbling, and but Prabhupada went on his morning walk. And Prabhupada was also he was much older than we were, because you feel the night when there's a big tension like that, you feel the next day all that adrenaline, it gives you a lot of pain. So but Prabhupada went on his morning walk. So Prabhupada followed that instruction. That my mother came to see Prabhupada after, because I was telling her about it, and she wanted to see what. And then my brother came and joined me also, and she wanted to see what we were getting into. And so she came one evening just before the kirtan, and by that time I had also already been home to visit her, and she saw, we were strict vegetarian. We wouldn't eat the food that she cooked, and the pots were contaminated. She was contaminated. The whole house was contaminated, and so she said, "Hey, what's happening here?" Anyway, so she went to see Prabhupada, and Prabhupada in his room had one folding metal chair, which was meant for VIPs who couldn't sit on the floor. So this chair was put out for her, and she sat on this chair, and everyone else, Prabhupada, us, we sat on the floor. And then she was asking Prabhupada, what are you doing with my boys, and this and that. And Prabhupada was explaining, preaching. And so then at a certain point, Prabhupada asked that, I'm taking care of your sons. By that time I had left my apartment and moved into the storefront. Ragamuni also. I'm taking care of them, I'm feeding them and looking after them and providing, and actually we have no income here and so on. And maybe you would like to give some donation. And my mother looked at us and looked at Prabhupada and said, well, donation, I think I've already given a donation. I've donated my sons. And Prabhupada said, oh, yes, very good. And he said, that's okay. And, but by her saying that, and it was like she gave us to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada accepted. The Swami would walk into the room, into the storefront to give the class. Everyone would bow down. I saw others doing it, so I started doing it. This was in the very beginning. But Gargamuni wouldn't. He was the only one. He would just sit there. And this was going on for some time. And but Gargamuni, I think, felt a little self-conscious about it. And, after class, Prabhupada would always ask for questions. So on one occasion, then Gargamuni raised his hand and asked that, the others, when you come into the room, everyone bows down, but I don't bow down, and because I don't feel like bowing down. So if I don't feel like doing it, I'm not going to do it, because then if I did it, it would be artificial. So I want to be more real, and I'm just explaining to you, and if this is all right. So Prabhupada looked at him and said, you should bow down. And by bowing down, then the feeling will come. So this is a very nice instruction. And of course, he started doing that. And it worked. The initiation was, so Prabhupada asked me that I should invite my mother to come. So I did, and she came. My father wouldn't come, but she came. And again she sat on the chair, and we had the fire sacrifice, and then, so at the end, of course, when Prabhupada gave the beads, and then, so I bowed down to him, and then Prabhupada said, no, you bow down to your mother. So I turned and I got down and I bowed down, and of course I said the mantra of obeisances to Prabhupada. But my mother, it was quite, she felt quite uncomfortable having her son bowing down at her feet. And then Prabhupada instructed me that whenever you see your mother, you bow down to her. You offer obeisances. And I used to do that. Sometimes I would go home and visit them. They lived in Connecticut. Once I went there to distribute books to all our family friends. So I would, ring the doorbell, and my mother would open the door, and there was nobody there, but there I was on the ground offering obeisances. And so she didn't like it, of course, but actually it was Prabhupada's instruction, and we did it, and we felt closer to Prabhupada, and of course the attachment, mother-son family attachment was kind of dissipated by that. It made the relationship more formal. So it was a nice instruction. Then at a certain point, Prabhupada got the stroke. That was Memorial Day weekend in '67. And anyway, after that whole affair, Prabhupada couldn't type. He was actually partially paralyzed on one side. Anyway, there was no question of how is Prabhupada going to write his books? So we had to talk all about this. It was a big thing, what to do, so on. Longhand, that would be so difficult. Anyway, Gargamuni had seen, they were just starting to come out with these dictaphones, office dictaphones, and he had seen one in the store window. And he had gone in and asked about it, and he went to Prabhupada and asked Prabhupada, maybe I just saw one. And Gargamuni had some money, he was doing already his business, and so Prabhupada said, yes, that is good, we bring that. So he bought it, and had the man show him how to operate it and so on. And so he brought, it was his Grundig, German, and so he brought the machine in, and so Gargamuni unpacked it and was going to show Prabhupada how to operate it. I mean, it took Gargamuni like an hour just to learn how to operate it. Prabhupada said, no, that's all right, you just leave it here, I will see to it. And he did that, and Prabhupada was able to operate it without showing him how to do it or anything. Interesting. And so then Prabhupada was making these tapes. So Prabhupada's dictating all these tapes, so then we had to transcribe the tapes. That was something, everyone took a try at it. It was very tedious work, and to go back and forth, and the typing, and we all found it quite kind of tedious to do. And, we weren't making so much progress on the transcribing. Prabhupada was becoming doing more and more of the tapes. So then this became another problem. Hayagriva was the best typist, but then he was going to teach in the university and so on. So it became, that was a problem. So then one day, this boy walks in the storefront. His name was Neil, and he was from Antioch College. In Antioch College, they have a program where you can work at a job and get college credit for that job if it has something to do with your study. I don't know what his study was, something in sociology. So he just came to New York and wanted to work for some organization for a semester. And so he picked the Hare Krishna. And he just kind of walked in. He didn't even know what we were doing or anything. And anyway, I asked him, well, what can you do? He said he wanted to do some. I said, well, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm a typist, and I'm a transcriber. I said, okay. It was like the answer to the prayers. There was all these kind of little miracles. These are like little miracles. Everything with Prabhupada was always these little miracles, one after the other. And we didn't even have a table for him to use. We like made some cartons, some fruit cartons, and put a piece of wood there, and put the dictaphone there in the corner of the apartment, and boy, he just raced through those tapes. And it was such a nice, Prabhupada was just making more and more tapes, and he's just racing through transcribing. He had the editing. And he finished Bhagavad Gita, he did Nectar Devotion, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, some other things, Isha Upanishad and so on. And Because then when his semester ended, then he left. Never saw him again. But he had done so much. And it was just what was required. So then came to publish Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada was so determined to publish it, but there was no money to print it ourselves. And anyway, Allen Ginsberg, who was, although he wasn't a Vaishnava, wasn't a devotee, I mean, he had his own lifestyle, but he was very sympathetic. He had been to India. He liked chanting. Prabhupada instructed him, chant Hare Krishna before you do any poetry reading, and he used to do that. And he gave Prabhupada first harmonium, which he had brought from India, and he would give donations, and with the immigration thing he was helping. And anyway, when the manuscript was ready for printing, we gave it to Alan, and he was very enthusiastic. He sent it to his publishers, but they rejected it. And then he sent it to some other publishers he knew. Again, everyone rejected it. And after about 6 months of trying it, he just lost interest. Everyone was rejecting it. So then Prabhupada gave the manuscript to Ray Ramra, who was the editor of the Back to Godhead. And so he tried, and he was sending it around to academic publishers, and again, everyone rejected. You know, you get the little letter in the mail, thank you very much, however, this doesn't fit into our plans, you know, this and that and everything. So then after about 6 months, then he gave up. So then Prabhupada gave it to me to do. Anyway, by that time, I had absolutely no faith that this was, because I could see that there was no commercial value to this manuscript. I mean, every page there was Krishna consciousness, Krishna consciousness. And I was thinking, well, if you're not Krishna conscious, and you're not interested in Krishna consciousness, you're not going to be interested in this commentary. There's no fancy poetry or scholarly, the footnotes and the academics, and I had read different Bhagavad Gitas, and no esoteric things, and so I just had no faith, and I didn't know what to do, and I was going to bookstores and trying to see how they were doing, and then to learn how to get a book published, and I was going to the library and reading and trying to find out how to do this, but I didn't know what to do. So in the meantime, Prabhupada had recorded the record, the Hare Krishna record, which eventually the Beatles got, and that interested them when they heard that record. And the record was doing, there was a lot of interest. It was very nice. One radio station played it all night long. For 10 hours they played the record over and over again. The WBAI, one of these alternative radio stations. So we were advertising the record in different kind of underground publications. An order came for the record one day. I used to get the mail and then bring it up to Prabhupada, and we'd go over it together. He would dictate and I would take notes and answer letters and so on. So one order came for a record. It was the letter was from the Macmillan Company, big publisher worldwide. So and it was on this letterhead, Macmillan letterhead. So and so was ordering a record album with a check, and I rushed up to Prabhupada. I said, Prabhupada, look, someone is from the Macmillan Company. I mean, I didn't know what to do. We were, helpless. Prabhupada had to tell us everything. So, Prabhupada said, well, he thought for a while, and then he said, you bring the record tomorrow, you bring it to the person, personally, and you tell that you have a Bhagavad Gita that you want to publish. And I said, well, okay, I don't know, should I bring the manuscript? No, you just tell them. And I said, well, okay, but I have to say something about you as the author. Maybe I should bring some of the other books you published, like from India, the books you have already published in my Bhagavad Gita. He said, no, just tell them that you have a Bhagavad Gita to publish. I said, okay. So the next day I went uptown, I got dressed up in shirt and tie, and went uptown to they have a skyscraper, Macmillan Company, and the person who I was giving the record to was an accountant. Had nothing to do with really publishing. He was just adding numbers, and I'm sitting there and I'm trying to think, well, how am I going to tell him? What am I going to tell him? So anyway, we were talking something about the record and the mantra and so on, and I'm kind of sitting there bewildered, and then the door opens and in walks someone, and he all of a sudden, very formally, he says, well, I'd like to introduce you to, and this is James Wade, he's our senior editor, and this is me. So, and I just shook hands with Mr. Wade, and I just looked him right in the face. I said, I have a Bhagavad Gita to publish. He said, a Bhagavad Gita by a Swami, an Indian Swami, here in New York? He did this himself? I said, yes. He said, complete the entire Bhagavad Gita? I said, yes. And he said, well, that's exactly what I'm looking for to fill out our religion section. I got Buddhas, and we have the Quran, we have everything. We don't have a Bhagavad Gita. I need a Bhagavad Gita. Can you want us to publish? Well, we'll publish it. We'll publish it. And I couldn't believe what was happening. He actually agreed to publish it. He didn't even see the manuscript. Everyone else had rejected it for whatever reason, and here he is accepting it without even seeing it. I mean, I couldn't even believe it. I just flew back down to Prabhupada and told him the news. I was so excited. And Prabhupada it was like he was expecting it. Prabhupada just nodded. So then, a couple days later, I went to see him. And I went up to his apartment, and I walked through, there was this courtyard there, and there was this one devotee, and he was typing. He was typing, completely immersed in his work, and I associated that his manuscript he was typing, and it must have been something that Swami's books. So I went up to the apartment, knocked on the door, and the door opened, and the Swami was there. And he said, yes. And I said, well, I'd like to speak with you. And he said, oh, yes, come in. And then we went in together to his little sitting room. Prabhupada sat down behind this little metal box. It looked very quaint. And we started talking. He asked me my name. And I told Bruce, and then Prabhupada was talking about in India during the Raj. There was one Lord Bruce, and so on. And then I started telling the Swami about myself, and then I just found myself saying that, well, I want to become your student, full time. And actually, I had just finished taking, I had taken a special training for teaching, and I was employed by the New York City Board of Education to teach remedial reading. It was a special program to culturally deprived children, means, in the ghettos. And so I said to Swami that, well, I've just finished my training. Actually, my assignment was beginning the next day. And I said, well, my job actually begins, I have a job, and I'm beginning it tomorrow as my assignment, but I just want to be with you. I just want to be your student. And, so Prabhupada said, well, that's fine. But you have a job. And I said, yes. Probably kind of lit up. He said, oh, and what is the salary? So then Prabhupada explained to me Bhagavad Gita in a nutshell. And he explained Krishna telling Arjuna to do his duty, to do devotional service, to work for Krishna, but not partake of the fruits of the activity, and give all the fruits of activity to Krishna. So Prabhupada explained to me, and then he gave me a very practical instruction, first instruction. So he said, you can be my student, and you can also do your job, and you can also give the fruits of your job to Krishna. So my first service was to work and to give my salary to Prabhupada. You see, all these different things, the different aspects of the movement, Prabhupada didn't specifically, order them, but he kind of, he guided us, but we had to find them out for ourselves. And it had to come from our enthusiasm and our realizations. He never made any demands. I mean, even everything, to begin with, like even initiations, he didn't say, all right, now I'm going to initiate you. No, we had to come to Prabhupada and ask, would you initiate us? He never said, now you wash my clothes. We had to come to Prabhupada, can I wash your clothes? So that's the way it was done. Can I learn how to cook prasadam? To make dal, and like that. So even like the High Nam, we would always. Even when Prabhupada was there, Prabhupada led every kirtan. He would play the drum, he would say the prayers, he would lead the kirtan. But nobody even dreamed of singing a kirtan himself. Prabhupada did it. The Swami did it. See? So when Prabhupada left to go to India, to Vrindavan after his stroke, so then we had to do ourselves. As a matter of fact, when Prabhupada left to go to San Francisco, he left to go and do the mantra rock dance Mukunda arranged, and in New York, all of a sudden, who's going to give the lecture? Prabhupada gave every lecture. who's gonna play the drum? And I mean, we were just standing around not knowing what to do. All right, why don't you try? Okay, and like this, and okay, I'll give some Raymond said he'll give the lecture, and this, that. And so we just started doing and then I wrote a letter to Prabhupada that, we don't know, we miss you, and anyway, Prabhupada wrote back, oh, it's very nice that you are missing me, and if you like, he said, you can put my photograph on my sitting place. So, in Prabhupada's apartment where he would sit. So, we didn't even have a photograph. Nobody had a camera. We didn't even wear watches. That was, that's where we were coming from. It was things. We didn't want things. So, I had asked devotees in San Francisco to take a photograph of Prabhupada and send it to us. And then we had it blown up and framed, and we put it at Prabhupada's desk. So, with the street chanting, Prabhupada would go, on Sundays, he would take us to the park, and we would carry the rug, and Prabhupada would sit under a tree and have the kirtan. But it was Prabhupada having the kirtan. Nobody ever thought, we'll go ourselves. Because everything was done by Prabhupada. But then when Prabhupada wasn't there, of course we only had the kirtans in the storefront or in the park. And it's hard to believe, but we were kind of shy and reluctant to, at the same time, just to do what we were doing at that time was very far out, and people didn't know what to think of it, and we were feeling self-conscious. And so I remember one night we were having kirtan in the storefront, and it was very hot. It was summer in New York, and finally it was just too hot to be in there, and someone said, well, let's go outside. And so we just went outside and started having kirtan. And immediately, of course, when we had kirtan in the shop, some people would stop by and look in and scratch their head and, walk by, and they thought this was nuts. And then mostly the people who just came in were the drunks, the Bowery bums. They would kind of lurch in, and I would then lurch them back out. And but that was the only interest. Only young hippie kids would actually walk in. So we went outside and just on the street corner. But I'll never forget that first kirtan. It was outside. I was thinking, if we chant loud enough, maybe Prabhupada, he's in India, maybe he'll hear it. And somehow we'll just call out and connect. So everyone was chanting very enthusiastically, kirtan, and playing. We had the tom-tom and playing the drum, and then this huge crowd formed. Everyone stopped. And this huge crowd, hundreds of people, and then somebody just, we used to pass around at the end of the kirtan a collection ball, but that was in the temple. So someone put the collection ball on the sidewalk, and people just started throwing money, pitching money in. And that was the first actual kirtan. It just happened like that. And then we realized that, hey, this is a way of spreading, also getting support, but also then some people were chanting, and we had flyers. They would take flyers. We had no books. So it just happened like that. And then I wrote Prabhupada a letter in India saying how this is what happened. Prabhupada said, oh, very good. You continue this, expand it, and like that, Prabhupada. Prabhupada always guided, but always from behind. In old days, which was the most poignant, we were there in Vrindavan and having like the vigil, the kirtan, and taking turns chanting softly with the little symbols, and at a certain point I got sick. I got this fever. I don't know what it was. I just one day just walked back to my room and just collapsed right in my room, and just fever. And so I was sick for a few days, and anyway, it took me about a week or so to recover, and then I was able to, when I got better, then I was able to again go and see Prabhupada. So when I came there, of course Prabhupada was just lying on his bed, and he was conversing with his servants, and sometimes he would ask who was having the kirtan. And so that particular day he asked, and they said, they mentioned my name, and then Prabhupada said, "Oh, Brahmananda," and then he made the call, and then I came forward, and so he said, "You were ill? You were not feeling well?" I mean, here's Prabhupada, just completely shriveled, and I mean, Prabhupada was not maybe feeling. I mean, when Prabhupada was concerned, I'm not feeling well. I had just a little fever, and here's Prabhupada on his departure bed, and he said, "Oh, you were not." I mean, he with such concern and really with love, and I just was totally, affected by that. How Prabhupada could be thinking that I wasn't feeling well. So I think this is the thing that affected me most, how much Prabhupada loved us. But the thing is, we're not very lovable, and we all have defects and so on. But why did Prabhupada love us? And he loved us because he saw us as servants of Krishna. And he also even said that we were sent by his Guru Maharaj to help in his mission. But anyway, Prabhupada saw us as Krishna's servants, and his mission was to spread Krishna consciousness. So whatever we could do to assist and do something in this cause of Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada very much appreciated, and I think that's the essence of Srila Prabhupada. At least he could see us as servants of Krishna. So let us just try and be that. Hans Duda had just gotten a bus, kind of an old school bus, but it was the first bus in the movement, the first Sankirtan bus. And he was talking about having this world Sankirtan party and travel all over. Everyone was excited about that, and he was telling Prabhupada about it. So Prabhupada said, when Prabhupada would go on the morning walk, Prabhupada said one morning, he called Hansa Duda and said, let us go for a ride in your bus. And Haransaduta was, oh yes, so he was all excited. And but then when we went out to the bus, we realized Haransaduta, they had taken all the seats out of the bus. It was just this floor. He hadn't yet done anything with it. And Prabhupada couldn't sit like that, but there was no seat. So I got some chair from the temple, some kind of a chair. So what I did is I had to hold this chair down there was no way of attaching it to the floor. I had to hold it on the floor, and Prabhupada sat in the chair. And all the devotees piled into the bus. Everyone was very excited. And where we're going to go, a ride with Prabhupada. So, and then Prabhupada started giving directions. I think Vamandev was driving, and Prabhupada was giving directions. Turn here, go on this road. And he was driving, and Prabhupada said, all right, now turn here. And in this way, Prabhupada was giving all these directions. And everyone said, where are we going? Nobody knew. No one was bold enough to ask Prabhupada where we're going, but Prabhupada knew where he was going. And we're going throughout Boston, and Prabhupada's giving directions. Devotees are all chanting on their beads. And we go to the downtown area, and finally we come to the waterfront, the dock area, and boom, there we are, Commonwealth Pier. And actually, no devotees had ever been there or even seen it. Prabhupada didn't tell us so many details about Islam. He was always talking about Krishna. So, and even when we got there, we didn't really fully realize where we were, but this was actually the place where Prabhupada had first entered America. And so anyway, Prabhupada started walking, and we were all clustered around him. The devotees were walking on this big pier in these big roads, and there's kind of all these warehouses are there, and factories and so on, and we're walking amidst all these big buildings, and Prabhupada was preaching, and as he always did on his morning walk, and then he was talking about pure devotional service, very important, pure devotional service. And of course, the word unalloyed, Prabhupada would always use this word, unalloyed. And it's kind of an exotic, this unalloyed devotional service. Because unalloyed, of course, unalloyed means alloy, it means a metal where you have alloys. An alloy is metal made up of many different kinds of metals. And Prabhupada was always saying unalloyed. So that meant without many metals, just one metal. So, and Prabhupada was preaching, and he was talking about unalloyed devotional service to Krishna and Lord Chaitanya and so on. And then at a certain point, Prabhupada was talking about this unalloyed, and he took his cane and he said, yes, unalloyed devotional service. And he pointed with his cane, and we all followed the cane, and there was this huge sign on this warehouse. It must have been, like 100 feet long, a big, huge thing, the whole building, and it was Unalloyed Steel Company. And we all looked and said, yes, unalloyed. And Prabhupada was using this word, unalloyed. I mean, that was probably one of the first sites he had. And Prabhupada used that in his preaching. And then he took us there and showed us, unalloyed devotional service. Very simple instruction, but he used it, he made it so graphic. Just like a teacher would use on a blackboard and write the word, and take the pointer and show. We were like that. Prabhupada used to call us his students. We were like these young students, and Prabhupada is showing us. We went to Mauritius. We had some devotees there. They were preaching, and of course Mauritius is the Prime Minister, the population of Mauritius, I think, is something like more than 50% is Hindu. They're from India originally, mostly from Bihar. Historically, the British had brought them there to cultivate sugar cane. So anyway, Prabhupada was to meet with the Prime Minister. He's no longer Ram Gulam. And so when Prabhupada arrived, the Prime Minister, I think he had some affairs. He was busy with some other affairs. Anyway, he gave Prabhupada his one of his personal limousines, which was a very nice. It was a Citroën. Citroën are very special cars. They're made of aluminum. They're not made of steel. And they have this suspension system. It's like an ambulance has, where it's like you're floating. Anyway, he gave his limousine, and there was this army officer who was the driver. So anyway, Prabhupada was there for a few days, and primarily he had come to see the Prime Minister. I had an occasion I had to make an international phone call. I went to someone's house to make the call. While I was there, I was watching TV, and on the TV it showed the Prime Minister cutting the ribbon on a big project that he was inaugurating. What was the project? The project was a chicken processing plant. And it showed how the chickens were taken, and there were these machines going around, and the chickens were hung on these by the neck, and then there was this knife cutting, and and then the feathers, and then the whole thing, and then out comes a chicken ready for cooking. And it was shocking to see us all on TV. This was a gift from the French government to the people of Mauritius. And I was there. Of course, they would then probably sell all the fertilizers and the chicken feeds and all the, these foreign aid projects are all tied in with, it's actually a business. Anyway, so I mentioned to Prabhupada that I saw the Prime Minister. When I mentioned what he was doing, Prabhupada said, "Oh, then he's Hindu," and he said, "I cannot meet him." So Prabhupada decided not to meet him. So because it meant the man had no principles. So anyway, so there were some days where there was really no programs scheduled. So Prabhupada thought we'd go for a ride. We had this big limousine there, and the officer, he had nothing to do, and Prabhupada wasn't going. But let us go for a ride. And so we all arranged it all. And Mauritius is a very scenic, very beautiful place. It's kind of pristine island. Prabhupada is riding in the back seat. I'm sitting next to him. Pushta Krishna was in the front seat. The driver is driving, and we were whizzing along. It was very pleasant. These sea breezes, the beautiful ocean, sky, and everything is very nice. These sugar canes growing. We were driving along the coastline, and beside him, Prabhupada had his cane, and Prabhupada was enjoying it very much. Had the window down and the fresh air, and he was sitting cross-legged on the seat, in the back seat, and so Prabhupada was enjoying, and then at a certain point, I didn't realize, I didn't notice it then, but later on, Prabhupada spoke. At a certain point, Prabhupada just took the cane and put it like on the floor and was holding it like this with his two hands. Just after taking the cane, we just made a turn on the corner, around the bend, and immediately, there was not a second to react. It happened so fast, head-on collision. What it was event we found out, a tourist from South Africa was driving on the wrong side of the road, and that was it. So we just hit. It was boom, head-on collision, and everyone in shock. The driver, he's full of blood. He's just I don't know what his condition on. Pushta Krishna, the glass shattered. He's wounded, blood. I also, my arm gashed. Prabhupada had blood on his dhoti, his knee, and we're all shocked. My first reaction, which was a little bit maybe inappropriate, I just put my arms around Prabhupada and just held him. It was just so shocking. And Prabhupada didn't say anything. And then Pushta Krishna was out of it. The driver, I was the only one who could function. I don't know, somehow I just got out of that car. The other car was a Volkswagen. It was man and woman, and the woman, she was like unconscious, and the man, he was getting out of his car. And anyway, I realized I got to get Prabhupada out of here. And I didn't even know where we were, and I didn't know where our house was. I didn't know anything. And anyway, then after a while, a car comes by, and now Mauritius, of course, is it's an Indian place, and there are very few Western or white people. So anyway, this other car, the car that we had, they were white people. The car that also came, there were white people there. So anyway, I tried to stop the car. The car just went right by. They didn't want to. They saw this accident. They didn't want to. Anyway, then another car came by. So this time, I stood in the middle of the road. The car stopped. So the car stopped, and I went up to the people in the car, and I said, "Please, we need help. My grandfather." I don't know what to say. I said, "My grandfather is injured, an old man. Please, you have to take us to the nearest hospital." So they said, "Okay," but they also saw the other car with the woman. The woman they saw Prabhupada, they saw he was in India. Then they see this woman, she's unconscious, she's full of blood. Prabhupada just had a little bit of blood, but she was really bad. Volkswagen, head-on collision. So and then the other man was wanting for his wife. He wanted attention for his wife. So we were competing, and so they were saying, well, maybe we should take her first, and because they didn't have much room. And I said, no, you take us. And the other man said, no, we want to go. And I just slapped the car. I said, you're taking us, and you're taking us right now, and let's go. There's no... So they said, okay. And so I took Prabhupada out of the car, and we went and everything. Prabhupada is absolutely silent, never speaks a word. I put him in the car, get in the car, and then these people start driving. And anyway, we're getting in the car. The only reason they were taking us because I forced them. And we get in the car, and they said, well, we don't know where the hospital is, and this and that. And anyway, we're going over here and to our hotel, and you can go to the hotel. And I said, no, we want to go to a hospital right now. And so Prabhupada didn't say anything, so I knew whatever I was doing, Prabhupada was agreeing to, because he didn't say anything. So... But then I could see these people weren't helping us, and they didn't even want to take us. They didn't want to find the hospital. They just wanted to go to... So I realized being with these people, this is not good. I just told, all right, stop the car. They're not going to help us. Stop the car. And they stopped the car, and I took Prabhu. We got out of the car, and then they left. And there we are, standing in the middle of nowhere, and I don't know where to go again. Lost, And then another car comes along, and I stopped that car. But this car had 3 Indian guys in it. And they saw Prabhupada, they were, offering respects, and Swamiji, and I said, yeah, take us to the nearest hospital. Get in the car, we'll go to the nearest hospital. Then Prabhupada said, no, take us home. No hospital. So I didn't even know where our home was, and we had to. Eventually, they could understand where it was and so on. And so anyway, they were very happy to take us immediately home. We were all the way on the other side of the island. It was quite a drive. So we go home, and the car pulls in. Harikesh Maharaj was there. He didn't come with us. He stayed. He was doing the transcription. He stayed back. He didn't know what was, because we left in a limousine and we came back in this junky old, with 3 Indian boys, a junky old car. And then Prabhupada gets out of the car and there's blood on his door. He's just shocked. And Prabhupada's not speaking anything. Just goes into the house, sits down in his place. And so we had to dress. There was a wound. We had to dress the wound, clean it, and then Prabhupada was saying that now he wants to go back to Bombay. Prabhupada never wanted to leave Bombay anyway, even for any other trip, because Prabhupada was very much concerned with the Bombay project, getting the land, fighting all the government, the municipality, the local politicians, the residents, the seller. It was just a constant battle. It required constant supervision. Prabhupada had to do that. So then Prabhupada said, well, let us immediately go back to Bombay. So,
Did he ever make
and Prabhupada never spoke about it. One day a letter came, Prabhupada was in India. What had happened was that Prabhupada was having these big public programs in India. And one evening, some man challenged Prabhupada. He was actually Arya Samajist. Anyway, he was saying that, oh, Swamiji, you have come here to India with your Western chalas, and but we know all these things. This is our culture. We have all these things, and so better you go, to the other places and do your work there. And all right, you've been to the West, but what about the Muslim countries? What about Pakistan? You should go to Pakistan and preach there and make them devotees. So this was in a big public, one of these pandals, thousands of people. So Prabhupada said, so you are challenging us to go? And he said, yes, I challenge, yes, you challenge you should go to Pakistan. So Prabhupada said, all right, we will go. And then Prabhupada wrote these letters. He wrote a letter to me, immediately go to West Pakistan, he wrote me, and he wrote to Gargamuni, you immediately go to East Pakistan. And we got these letters, and we immediately left. I don't remember everything was said, but Prabhupada said, immediately go. Immediately meant, boom. The next day, I didn't have any money. They paid for my bus from Florida to New York. I didn't go. And we left immediately. Gargamuni, he had money and he flew. I had to go by overland to India, taking hitchhiking, buses, trains, whatever way I could go. That's how I went. And then, of course, the war was beginning. Actually, then Prabhupada then found out about the war situation and the hostilities between Pakistan and India were. This is the 1971 war. Prabhupada wrote a second letter saying that I don't advise you to go at this time. But we never got that letter. We had already left. So we walked right into a war situation. Gargamuni, especially East Pakistan. I mean, when his plane landed at the airport, there was no transportation to go into the city because there was no cars on the road. He had to walk from the airport into the city. But just by walk, and we went, of course, in our sannyas dress and so on. Just by the time he arrived in the city, he had to walk something like 20 miles from the airport to the city. By the time he arrived in the city, he had thousands of people following him, just wanting to know who he was, what was going on, and so on. So, anyway, we were preaching and we were trying to do something, but it was so difficult. And I was in Karachi. Just north of Karachi is the Sindh Desert. It's the hottest place in the world. You know, I mean, it averages 125 degrees. I mean, it's the hottest place in the world. I'm right there, and it's in May. It's the hottest month. You know, I mean, I was just so sick, and with the dysentery and so many things. So, and I had no books, and there's people are spitting on me on the street and threatening to put a knife in my back, and we had kirtan, and people would come up and just, you know, rub off the tilak, you know, and spit, and you know, what a situation. Okay, so anyway. So then, finally, I sent a telegram to Prabhupada, who was in Bombay. Of course, Karachi and Bombay is just not far at all, a few hundred miles. I said, can I get out of here? I mean, I wasn't supposed to be there anyway. Prabhupada said, don't go. And there we were. So Prabhupada said, all right, come immediately. So then, and then, of course, they made those reports. It appeared in the Pakistani papers first published it, and then the Indian press picked it up, and they published it. 4 Hare Krishna missionaries shot. and Prabhupada's in and the Kuranda came and showed Prabhupada the newspaper, and it didn't give any names, but it said 4 Hare Krishna missionary shots. So the Gargamuni was there with Pushta, I was there with Jagandi Ras. So there were 4 of us, although we were in different east and west. Shot, and Prabhupada, my God, shot, and so Prabhupada was very disturbed, and he had Kuranda go to the embassy and find out this, that, and everything. And actually, Prabhupada thought we had been shot. So, so then I sent a telegram. So Prabhupada said, yes, come immediately. It said, come immediately. Bhaktivedanta Swami, 4 words. Oh, those are the best 4 words. And, I mean, to get out of the country was a big thing. Somehow we were able to get out. And so I came to Bombay, and I found out where Prabhupada was staying, Akash Ganga. And I went there, and I walked in the room, and Prabhupada, I mean, he just immediately got up from his seat, and he came over, and he just put his arms around me and just hugged me to his chest, and then he took his hands, and he was just putting his hands all over me. I mean, just like a mother. The child had been hurt or something, and the mother is just seeing that the child is still intact. I mean, he was just so. He just embraced. It was just so.
And now we are going to go uptown to St. Mark's Place to do our kirtan and spread joy and peace to the people of New York. We invite all our friends to join us. Hare Krishna. I practice my Krishna consciousness by chanting when I work and on my way to work. And this is what we ask all good people, to try chanting. Try it when you wake up in the morning. Try it on your way to work on the subway. I know I chant every day on the way to work in the subway, and other people are kicking and shoving. I'm chanting, and I enjoy my subway rides.
That one can offer to me with love and devotion a flower, leaf. In this way he mentions vegetarian items. He never says offer me meat. So a bhakta, or a devotee, he eats prasadam, which means the remnants of the offering to Krishna. So he offers Krishna very nice things of halava and rasgulla and sandesh and puri and so many kachoris, so many samosas, so many nice things. Neither do we find the necessity to slaughter the animal and eat the flesh. We don't find need for that. Although we have been ourselves brought up in such a culture, we find after taking to this process that we lose our taste for these things. We no longer require, in fact we even shun it. If someone should offer something with meat, we will reject it immediately.
We do not take meals in the airplane.